In life's journey, we must seek to reflect, learn, and grow. Welcome to the Road to Rediscovery with your host, Aubrey Johnson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on past life lessons to learn and grow and to take it to the next level and help others who are struggling through dark times. You know, we all know life's journey contains the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And when everything is good, of course, we feel good. With a little forethought, we try to prepare ourselves for the event of a rainy day. After all, we don't have a magic crystal ball, right? But what happens if a major tidal wave of problems crashes upon you? After everything going so good for so long, how do you respond? My special guest is the founder and president of Caliber Security Partners, providing cybersecurity services to companies for over 10 years. After years of constant business growth, a few poor business decisions resulted in a debt of $750,000. Yes, you heard me right. $750,000 of debt that he owed to companies and agencies. You'll hear about his despair, his struggle, and of course, his success overcoming. We'll also talk about his book, Upsurge, Wreckage to Triumph, Rebuilding Your Personal and Business Life. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Tab Pierce. Tab, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Man, that was an awesome introduction. Thank you. That was great.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I mean, it's great having you on the show. I am so thrilled. So let's go ahead and dive into this. If you could share with the listeners where you're from and what led your interests starting off into the security industry.
Yeah. So I live outside of Seattle, Washington, in a city called Mukilteo. And if anybody knows where that's at, that's awesome because very few people do. Grew up in Tacoma, Washington, south of Seattle and north of Seattle now. And yeah, been a Washington State resident my entire life. As far as cybersecurity, I can't say that, when the dawn of the internet came about that I went, you know what, there's going to be bad people and this is where I'm going to go. I'm going to go to security. I stumbled upon it. I happened upon it. And, it was, the early days, it was really, really kind of interesting. We could have a person or two that looked like, Neo from the Matrix walk in and, clients would go, ooh, they must know what they're doing. They're dressed like Neo. It's matured over the years.
Yeah.
But, I've been doing it since about 1998 and
wow.
Still going strong.
Man, that is awesome. And speaking of which, and thank you for providing a little bit of history and context into, just the early days of the World Wide Web and the potential of security threats and that sort of thing. So, I want to touch on that for a minute, if you don't mind.
Sure.
And how it related to the growth and the initial growth and success of your business. So, around that time, I guess the World Wide Web was really beginning to thrive, and then all these different types of social media networks came out of the woodwork and everything. Technology was really starting to become more commonplace in household, I guess, during that time, right? So I'm sure your business acumen contributed a lot to the success of the company, your business decision making, and so forth. But was there any part of the timing in the evolution of the World Wide Web that kind of helped push that along for the success of your business?
Well, I stumbled into technology. I can't say that I started off. I started off as a sales guy. That was my my focus for years and years and years, and even inside of technology, it was within sales.
Right.
And when I finally decided to start, and this isn't my first company. I've started others, but this is my first one that I've had for 10 years.
Yeah.
when I first started it, there was there was a lot of ideas that I had, a lot of different different ways I thought that things should go. A lot of that tied into security, and I think that part of what I learned in security kind of helped me out in business and vice versa. But some of it also got me in trouble along the way. There's this. It's still a growth industry. There's a lot of competition, which people might not realize. But early on, there wasn't as much competition. It was growth, and you could make a lot of mistakes, and they could be hidden because there would just be something around the corner that would cover up the mistakes you were making, and then all of a sudden, that kind of starts to go away.
I see. Gotcha. So the company's thriving. It's moving. I think you had a couple acquisitions. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Humming along. And if you can just share with the listeners when things started to take a turn, how early did you detect ahead of time that this turn towards the iceberg was happening, or was it more of a reactive effect?
Probably just like the Titanic, there was probably things that, fortunately I got to live through my accident, but in hindsight, there were things that happened that were slowly, gradually leading us to that iceberg. But when the iceberg hit, it was more like, the ship was doing one of these, and we were like, hey, why is it we're not standing up straight? And then, and then the reality of the severity set in, and that just kind of almost, hit me in the face. I mean, that part wasn't gradual. It wasn't like, hey, this is going slow. It was like, this thing led to this thing, led to this thing. And then when the last thing hit, I looked up and I was like, oh man, we're in some trouble. And then that's when things got real.
I got you. And we're talking, I mean, all facets of your life is impacted, right? Family, your livelihood. I mean, every facet.
Yeah. Let me think if there was anything that wasn't. I don't think I think everything was. I mean, everything from my business to my relationship with my wife, to my kids, to, it's just everything. I mean, just breathing. I mean, it affected my breathing. It affected everything.
Oh no, I bet, man.
Sleep.
Without a doubt, Tab.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was getting at, right? If you can just kind of paint a picture for the listeners, describing at that time your mindset, your mental state, at that time, like how did you even function, the basic functions of interacting with people from day to day, right?
Yeah.
It's enough to be physically sick when you see a number like that.
Yeah. So I get this question asked a lot, and pretty much every time anybody asks it, I start smiling, and it just brings me this just like absolute joy. And I always feel like I need to preface that because you're asking me this really serious, treacherous time in my life, and I've got a big grin on my face. It's just mixed.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because I lived through it. And I made it through that experience. And I say that because I'm going to go back to answer your question, but I say that because that's what I feel. Those are the things I really feel. So what happened was, when the reality of it hit, I mean, when it like really sunk in, I don't remember the drive home from, because I was at the office. Don't remember the drive home. Don't remember any of that. I just remember going home. Actually, it's all blurry, right? But I remember there were a lot of things that surrounded it, but I remember at the worst part, sitting in this lazy boy chair at my house. my mother was, I think, 86 or something, 85 or something. She had a lazy boy, and I went, man, Mom, that looks comfortable. So I come home from work one time, I got a lazy boy because, that was, she's like, oh, he wants a lazy boy. So I didn't want it, but I spent 2 weeks in this lazy boy with the TV set on, and I don't watch TV, but just every thought, every negative thought going through my head, and just absolute deep despair, feelings of being a fraud. Why did I start a company? What made me think that I could actually do something like that? Wow. Everybody knew I couldn't do it except me. I was the only one that didn't know I couldn't do it. My wife was sitting, next to me, and for 2 weeks didn't talk. I didn't talk to her. She was talking to me. And I was thinking, I couldn't help but think, why is she with me? She's beautiful. I mean, I'm like, just, I'm useless. I mean, all of these thoughts. Thoughts that, we owed $250,000 to the IRS, and thoughts like Wesley Snipes went to jail for not paying his taxes. Well, I found out it was different.
Right.
It was different. But when you're in that situation, like, I'm going to jail. I mean, I remember going to the attorney going, well, how do we keep me out of jail? And he's like, you're not going to jail. I mean, all of those thoughts and just deep depression and just feelings of being worthless.
Wow.
So, and that hung on to me in one form or another for over 3 years. It hung on to me.
Man, Tab, that is a long time. Over 3 years.
Yeah, and there was glimmers. I mean, that 2 week period, that 2 week period was just like, just like condensed. And then, I was going into the office. I had a business partner that was causing me all kinds of problems, and I had this hard money lender that was like wanting their money, the IRS and the attorney, and it was just like closing down on me. And it was just brutal. And it wasn't until, it was a slow and gradual thing where I started to see like, hey, you know what? I think I had a win there. Something, and it was just those things that started to pull me out. But yeah, for 3 years in one way or the other, I lived in some serious fear.
Yeah, and rightfully so. I can understand why. So I want to ask you one more question, and then I want to start talking about taking that road back, right? Where you start to turn things around.
Yeah.
So without us going into a lot of detail on this, how did you feel about those business decisions? Were they just like the normal course of the day? I'm based on my role, I have these decisions to make. This decision is no different than the tens of hundreds of decisions I've made the past month, the past 6 months, or were these like pivotal, critical decisions that I guess required more time and attention?
Are you talking about pre or post?
I'm talking pre. So
okay, yeah. Well, pre, man, I made decisions and snap. I just do it because I was confident. I was sure of myself. I was like, hey, I do this stuff all the time. I was rolling, man. I was feeling good, and then and I didn't give any second thoughts. Nah, no second thoughts.
Yeah. So these were just like any other decision you made.
Then. Yeah, because I could outrun my problems. I always outran my problems until I didn't. But up to that point in time, I always outrun my problems, man.
Oh, nice. And hey, again, you say it with a smile, but you're here, Yeah,
well, yeah, man. I tell you, that's great.
Yeah. Oh, Tab, that's beautiful. So, all right. So now I want to talk about those small victories, those small incremental victories. Okay. Share with the listeners, when you're in that pit and you started to see these small victories, how did that road back look to you over time?
Yeah. So the very first one I had was in this 2 week period. And I don't remember if it was a day or if it was an hour or whatever, but I just you know, it was like it was like a gift from God. Honestly, it was like I just had this, like this. It was like the eye of the storm. It was like, you know, I just had this like peace and this just like, oh, nothing's wrong. I'm okay. And I just remember I pulled out a pen and paper and I wrote a letter to myself, and it's in my book. And it's funny because I was like, oh man, I mean, it is the most melodramatic thing I've ever written, and I put it in there because it was just kind of like this begging myself to like let me out, let that person let me out. So that was my first one, and then I started having, you know, I would go to the office because I had to go to the office, and I knew that I had to address things, and you know, it started off where, you know, I mean, I realized all, you know, some of the people that we owed money to were, you know, were small, right? And just, you know, get a little bit more paid off. And that was a little bit of a victory. And then, you know, sometimes I would just get this, like, I think that was a good victory. I think that was a good victory. I mean, it wasn't like it was like this big, huge one, but it was like, yeah, I think that was a good victory. And you know, I mean, it's interesting because people would, you know, I would talk to people about how, you know, because people are like, God, you know, man, you seem like a warrior. You know, you went and you handled your problems and you did it. And when somebody said that to me one time, I said, you know, for a long time, I was like a warrior that didn't have a choice but to go to battle. And I had to dragged my sword to battle. I didn't have the strength. I didn't have the strength to pick it up. And there were a lot of days when I would go to work, I just didn't have any strength, and I would just go there, and I wouldn't have the motivation to get myself excited, but I still had employees. So I remember I would drive into work, and I would be like, just like getting myself all fired up. I'd be like, yeah, man, yeah. Who wants a piece of this?
There you go.
Who wants a piece of this? This man. And it wasn't that and it was like, all I was trying to do was just get enough, like just enough fire in my belly so I could walk in the door and I'd be like, hey, how's everybody doing, man? How you doing? How's it? And then I'd go to my office and be like, holy crud, man. I was spent, man. So, you know, I would do everything I could to just try to have those little victories. Yeah. And then once you start to have some, then you start to, at least for me, I started to see things a little bit more logically, and I started to see things with a little bit more, a lot more strength. Not just a little bit, but a lot more strength. And it's not to say I wasn't still weak, because I was, but a lot more strength. And that's when I really started to make the changes.
Gotcha. So over time, with the small incremental wins, and you know, being able to pump yourself up enough to get the energy going in the office, it sounds like your self-doubt started to kind of wilt away at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't just go away, but what it did is it at first it was masked by some confidence, and then over time it started to get to just a realization that it was going to take time, but that we were going to get through it. And that's when things really started to change. And because then I started looking at things differently, and you know, and once you start looking at things from a point of strength instead of weakness, that's the pivotal turning point, because there were things when I felt like I was beholden to people. And then once I realized, like, wait a second, nah, I'm not beholden to them. They're beholden to me. And then that was the shift that really turned it around for me.
Beautiful. Perspective is everything, for sure. It's everything. All right. So if you can share with the listeners, some information about your book, Upsurge, Wreckage to Triumph, which, by the way, I love that title.
Thanks.
Cool title. And if you and when sharing the book, if you could perhaps describe how you applied the book, or applied to the book, what you've learned in going through your struggles.
So what I didn't realize when I wrote the book is that I did something that a lot of people hadn't heard of, and I didn't intentionally set out to do it. But the start of that book is I was in the midst of this. This book wasn't just written after I'd gone through it. It was written during it. So, my book on, my chapter on thoughts, and actually the chapter on thoughts was not even a chapter. It was written for me to like, hey, because I remember just like having this thought of like, man, I'm not, this isn't new, but I mean, it was like this, because I was so low, I was like, man, my thoughts really matter. And so I wrote this kind of paper to myself, and I jokingly said, well, there's chapter 1. And then later on, I because writing was therapeutic for me to kind of try to get me to, stay out of my head. But I wrote this. Right. I wrote this chapter, and I coined it "Burn, Baby, Burn" because it was like this whole, getting the fire going, get it going, and stoking the engine and stoking it. And I did it because I didn't feel like doing that. That wasn't how I felt. So I was writing this chapter about what I needed to do because I didn't feel like doing it. But the reason why I say that is I wrote that book starting off in that, living through that situation. And by the time I finished the book, I had been out of that situation for probably 6 months. So that whole thing, that whole book took me, I don't know, probably close to 3 years to write during that whole thing. And it's the maturation of just what I learned. And I mean, if you pay attention, the first part of the book sounds arrogant, but it's like me almost like trying to convince myself that I was these things. And then at the end, it's, the last chapter is about being a healthy narcissist. And it's the whole point is how you have to, or how I had to, like really, really, really deeply believe that I was something special. Not that I'm better than anybody else, because we're all special. Right. And it's just we're more special when we realize we're special. Yes. But that being a healthy narcissist meant that I realized that I had done something special, that I could do something special, but that I had an obligation to go back and help others. And that's the healthy part of it, right? The healthy part of it is I'm out to help others. And at the same time feel pretty good about myself or who I am, but not without always going back and helping people. And I think to me that was, the message I wanted to get through to the book was, just some things I learned, some tricks. What do they call those, life hacks? Like life hacks that I learned along the way that helped me prioritize and get certain thoughts into my head. And my hope is that anybody going through that, and I think there's a lot of people going through it right now with COVID, but anybody going through it can get through it faster than I went through it. Man, that's my hope.
And that speaks to helping others, being outward focused, helping others. And that's taking it to the next level, man, in a big way. Tab, I got to tell you, man, I appreciate the realness that you have shared. It's very eye-opening for me because I had no idea that this was written, at least at the beginning, as you were going through it, right? Yeah. And so to me, that brings an element of rawness and an element of just purity to the words written, because they're written as you are living them, and not to say anything bad or take anything away from retrospect when you look in retrospect, but as you're writing, whether it's for the intent of a book or not, and in this case it may not have been, I'm just guessing, but that's a wonderful, successful outcome. The purity and the rawness of the words, I can truly appreciate before even having a chance to read the book. So I really, really appreciate you sharing that realness with us, Tab. How can the listeners connect with you more, learn more about you, or maybe even pick up a copy of your book?
Yeah. So anybody who wants to talk to me, they can. There's, hey, this is the age of the internet. There's like a lot of different ways you can talk to me.
That's right.
You go to tabpierce.com.
Okay.
And there's a contact form. If somebody wants to do that, they can reach me at tabpierce.com. If that doesn't sound just a little bit full of myself, but it is what it is. They can, find me usual, there's not too many people named Tab Pierce. I think there's only one or two other ones on the planet. So if the guy looks like this, it's probably me. I'm out there. As far as getting the book, if anybody wants a signed copy, they can order one off of that tabpierce.com website.
Okay.
But if they want to buy it off of Amazon, it's available there, obviously, ebook through Kindle and through hard copy, but it's also available on Audible for those people like me that don't actually want to read, but they want to listen.
Sweetness. Well, we're going to have links to your website, tabpierce.com, as well as the direct link to the Amazon for the book and on Audible as well. We'll have all those links in the episode show notes for our listeners to click directly from to access, learn more about you, connect, and maybe, have a conversation with you and pick up a copy of the book.
Awesome.
So Tab, man, I really, really appreciate you being on the show, man. I'm going to go into a segment now I like to call 3 for the Road. In 3 for the Road, I ask my guests 3 thought-provoking, random questions that I challenge my guests to answer in 5 words or less. Do you think you might be up for it?
Yes.
There we go. All in one word.
That was the first question. Now you got 2 more.
Oh, that's the first time anyone has said that to me, man. And I'm like, yeah, well, Aubrey, I opened the door and he walked right through.
I'll give you a bonus, man. I'll give you a 4th, so you got 3 more.
Well, I appreciate that, sir. I appreciate that. Right on. Okay, so for 3 for the Road, here's question number 1. All right. In your life's journey, name one thing that you've done for the first time, and you are glad and you know in your heart of hearts that you got it right.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Permit? Okay. Are you talking about within a certain period of time or any time in my life?
Any time in your life.
Oh, dang. Okay. So let's see. I asked my wife to marry me. I think that was 6, but
how about I proposed
to my wife. I proposed to my wife. Look at that. Yeah.
Oh, sweet. Nice, man. Very, very wise words.
Best decision I ever made in my life. Not hers, but mine.
Yes. Nope. I understood. Question number 2. You get to go in a time machine and go back to the 1950s. You are allowed to bring one current security device with you of any kind. What would you bring?
Taser.
In a word, right? Taser.
Yep. Oh, yeah, man. Can you imagine that, man? Just walking down the street.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, nobody's going to know me, man. They're not going to know what's going on. I'm just tasing the hell out of everybody.
Well, they would think you're from another planet. Trust me.
I know. It'd be worth it.
Nice. All right, man. You're knocking these out of the park, Tab. Number 3 for 3 for the Road. In these days and times, what would you advise is the smartest type of security one should have today?
Use common sense.
Awesome.
Yeah. So often we don't do that.
Yeah, no, you're right. man, and that can protect you more than a lot of other things. So, well said, man, and that says it all. Use common sense. Tab, my man, it's been so great having you on the show, man. Thank you so much for coming on once again.
It's been a blast. I love it, man. This has been fantastic. Thank you for having me.
For sure, man. And we're gonna have to have a sequel, some months down the line, because I know you'll make some other major transformation, or maybe write another book, and just share with the listeners, what some updates that's happening in Tab's life, down the line, if you're willing.
Oh, heck yeah, I'm willing. I'm willing. I got time tomorrow. No, we'll wait. We'll do a little bit longer.
All right, we'll push it back a little bit.
Sounds good.
And a big thanks to all of you for checking in and listening. If you want an exclusive heads up for upcoming guests before the episodes are released, I highly encourage you to subscribe to our mailing list at roadtorediscovery.com. That's road, the number 2, rediscovery.com. And if I can take a quick minute just to send a listener shout out to Rayanne Chanel. Thanks, Rayanne, for your listenership and awesome feedback on the show. I am truly, truly grateful for your support. Thanks, Rayanne. Ladies and gentlemen, the Road to Rediscovery, it's part of a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon.